this.
What's going on, guys? So I'd like to talk a little bit about a card that is special to me, and a little history of it. So, the card that I used to play a lot, and I used to mess around with it in Raccoons, and I always knew about the card, so I'm not going to say it was discovered, but was Creature Swap. It's a cool card, it's a decent card, but is it a lot better than I think most people make it out to be? So most people only play Creature Swap when they think it's only supposed to be played in a certain deck, and then they don't touch it ever again because they think it's only supposed to be played in a certain deck. So they don't play it as a normal tech card. But I'm going to tell you to try it out. I want you to try out to play it as a tech card. You know why? It's pretty darn good, that's why. So, when you use Creature Swap, and you have a big monster on the field, or, I mean, they have a big monster on the field, or two big monsters, and you have, like, Jack, you can give them your monster, and then you can have their big monster. Just a thought. Now, that might sound like just an easy little thing, like, okay, I get it, we know what Creature Swap does. But think about it. While in a lot of the games, if you're down and out and something's bad gonna happen to you, it's usually because you just don't have anything good to draw into. Now somebody argue, well, what if you draw in the Creature Swap and you got nothing to go for it? Good, but that scenario can happen all the time, so I'm not gonna really use that as an argument. Though, being able to switch out a crappy card you have for a good card your opponent has is pretty useful. And while, like I said, other decks definitely do utilize it way better than others, if you go out and test it out, it's pretty nifty how effective this card is just with putting it down and giving your opponent some monster you don't really have any use for right now. Now, if you don't want to main it, that's whatever, but I definitely say it's a good side deck card for specific decks. So, decks that have like big monsters, that they're always about going to this like huge card. It's not really about, swarming the field with multiple monsters. It's about sitting on this card. As long as they can't negate it, which a lot of other decks do that, like Cyber Dragons, they can negate it. But if they cannot negate it, it's a good card to get around it and get your opponents it, because that's a choice. It doesn't target them. So that's another big thing, is if a card can't be targeted, Creature Swap really helps out because it's not a targeted effect. It has to just be rotated. So you get your opponent's monster, they get your crappy monster, and you don't have to worry about it targeting or having to worry about any of those types of effects, because it does not target. So it's a card that doesn't target, we've already talked about that, so, that's always nice. And you may be thinking, hey, why Creature Swap it when I could just smash and ground it? Well, that is a good one. That is, I'm hearing that one. That's, okay, yeah. Now, let me think about that. While Smash and Ground does have it where you don't have to have a monster, the thing about Creature Swap, which is self-explanatory, is you get their monster. So yes, you have to have a monster in the field. But in this game, if you don't have a monster in the field, you already lost anyway. So having Smash and Ground probably isn't going to help you. So having Creature Swap can make a weak deck better. And seriously, play Raccoons and you play 3 Creature Swap, it's no meta or anything, but it puts up the power a whole lot than it did without Creature Swap. So you play a deck and tack in like a Creature Swap or 2, it can maybe help you out, get around some of your opponent's more problematic cards, or just to make a problem for your opponent. He has to deal with the fact that he has Creature Swap, and that's not always something that people want to deal with, especially depending on what cards you give them, because depending on what the cards you give, they might not be too happy about it. Though, out of everything that I find it useful for, is when your opponent exceeds or fusion summons into a monster and they sit on it for a turn. Not saying that the deck's complete objective is to make this monster, but a lot of times when your opponent makes cards, they'll do some plays, they'll attack you, and then they'll go and make an Xyz or Synchro, sit on it for your next turn so they can go make a play again, so when they can summon more monsters, they can attack into you. That's when Creature Swap I have found is the most useful. They sit on this card, waiting for it to use again next turn, or if they've already used it this turn, they're going to pretty much obliterate you next turn. And that is when I get it, because they only have one monster in the field because they just use 2 or so to make another monster. Now, a lot of times in this game, they've already used a bunch of monsters and they can summon more with the cards they made, but there are still a lot of decks where it's like, okay, I have these 2 monsters in the field, I do this to you, I sync up, I Xyz out, or I fusion out, I'm sitting on this monster after you use its effect, and I'm waiting for it next turn to destroy you, and that's when Creature Swap is really good, because you can take that monster and then utilize its effect to a degree, unless if it's already been utilized or exhausted all its materials from being an Xyz. But that is when I find the card the best. That's one of the best time that I've ever used it, or always use it. And for me, teching it in has worked out pretty well. And of course, if you're not fully in with the teching in part, try siding it. Side decks are pretty packed full right now, but just try siding like 2 Creature Swap for like boss heavy decks and see if it would help it out at all. Not saying to go do this in tournament. I'm not telling you right now before you go to a tournament, hey, let me take out some Creature Swaps and try it without testing. I'm saying to your locals, Dev Pro, things like that. Just try it out. It's not for everybody. Some people have specific play styles and specific cards they like to play, but for me, Creature Swap's been, hitting a little niche, or something like when I'm like, this is like a card that I like putting in every other deck. And I haven't had a lot of cards like that besides like the Solemns and the Bottomlesses and stuff. Haven't been really new staple cards been playing in decks lately, because most cards are usually bad, so that's why you don't really use like new staples anymore. So Creature Swap's been my new staple, and I've been enjoying it. So let me know down below what you guys think, and if you guys tested it out. If not, go test out Creature Swap as a tech, and see what the results are. Hey, once in a while, it might come in handy. But that's for me, guys. That's all I got, and that's all I'm gonna do. So, all right, I'm out. All right, yeah. Oh yeah.
Damn. Yeah.